On today's episode of the Pretend GM, I sat down with Jay Felicio of QB List. We talked about why we need to be more patient, especially with young players in fantasy football, when to properly take risks throughout the season, and his favorite strategies to use every year as he gets closer to the fantasy playoffs. Just like you and me, Jay Felicio is a Pretend GM. What I like to do at the beginning of this every single time is remind the audience what this show is about and let you know what this show is about. And this is all about taking the knowledge, the experience, the wisdom that you have, and trying to bridge that gap between fantasy analysts and the fantasy managers that play this game. So much of what we do is start these guys, trade for these guys, draft these guys. We give the fish. Now let's teach a man to fish, right? Like let's do a little behind the scenes work. Let's talk about this. And I always like to start this off with, if you had to sum up your fantasy football philosophy in one sentence, what would it be?
If I may, I'd like to quote the well-renowned wordsmith Ricky Bobby. If you're not first, you're last. And I know it's cheesy, cliche, but was running a couple different things running through my head. And the reason I went with that is it applies to the way that not only I do my analysis, but that I play in general. I'm the type of person, I know some people like to diversify when it comes to having multiple teams and getting a little bit of this guy, a little bit of that guy, but I know how much work goes into this, and not saying that the ideas are going to be right or wrong, but if I'm in on somebody, there's a lot of time and effort and thought put behind that. If I like somebody, I'm going to have them in as many leagues as I can possible. I'm going all in. Sometimes it works out, like I was in on Lamar Jackson, in his MVP season, his first MVP season. Puka Nacua, I had him everywhere. Sometimes it doesn't work out, like Kenneth Walker this year, or have you heard of a guy named Laviska Shenault? So it's just one of those things that I understand the idea of wanting to diversify and kind of spreading a wide net and get a chance of having a championship somewhere. But I'm all in. It's if I like a guy, there's a reason. I put the time and effort in my analysis. I'm not just going to diversify for the sake of diversification.
Yeah, man. I mean, like I get that, because so many people come to me and say, hey, like, who's the guy that's just going to get me 10 points, right? Like, who can I start? Who can I draft? That's all I really want is I want a consistent team. And like, so often I'm letting them know, like, actually what you want to go for is some upside here. Sure, you want to mix it up a bit, but I like what you're saying is kind of going all in on whatever approach it is, right? Like if these are the players you are into, like just go all in on that. Like it's a fantasy. Yep. It's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be going on like what you have researched. And speaking of that, I'd love to know how you got started doing this, right? Because like everyone has their own different format and how they research, how they got started in this industry. What was the thing that got you into the fantasy football industry as an analyst, and what from your previous life before this has sort of shaped the way that you analyze this game?
So there's two major events, if you want to call them major events, that kind of led me to becoming a fantasy analyst. The first was just like pretty much everybody else in the late 2000s, the 2010s. I listened to some guy named Matthew Berry. I'm not sure if you've heard of him before. The Fantasy Focus 06010. That was it. That was the podcast. That's all there was for such a long time. And I've not met him yet. I want to tell him this story to his face, but I actually got pissed off at Matthew Berry. Excuse my language, but the year that Victor Cruz got injured on Sunday Night Football against the Eagles was one of the few years that I actually had a Giant on my team. I don't avoid them or go for them by any means, but people know I'm a Giants fan, so they raised the price, and I'm not going to pay extra just to have a guy on my team. But I had Victor Cruz, and when he went down, I picked up both of Ruben Randall and some guy named Odell Beckham. I think he was pretty good for a little bit. Mm-hmm. And was trying to decide who I wanted to hang on to. I didn't want both guys, and I needed a tight end. So I was debating between the two, and I was listening to 06010, and Matthew had some great analysis. I mean, it made sense. We know, especially being on this side now, you can make all the right calls and it's still the wrong decision. But something along the lines of Ruben Randall was getting all the red zone looks. He's the guy you want to hang on to. So went to my buddy who happened to be my greatest rival, not only in fantasy, but in life. He had an extra tight end. I said, hey, man, I need a tight end. What do you want? He said, well, give me one of your Giants receivers. You pick which one. So I traded him Odell Beckham Jr. I couldn't even enjoy his rookie breakout. Like it still brings me pain to see.
Do you even remember who you got in return?
Yeah. Oh, unfortunately, I do. It was Larry Donnell is who it was.
Oh, come on. Yeah. Come on, Jay.
Yeah, I know.
Come on, man.
I know. Trust me, it hurts. It hurts just to see the replay. Like my son starting to get into sports and he's going back and watching old highlights and stuff. And he saw the Odell catch and I'm like, yeah, I remember exactly where I was standing because I was simultaneously screaming for joy and dying inside as I watched it happen. But
did you pop on the Larry Donnell highlights for him so he could, compare?
I did get a 2-touchdown game out of Larry Donnell at least. So there's that. But the reason that led me to becoming an analyst is I swore off Matthew Berry after that. I stopped listening to Fantasy Focus. But of course, he's responsible for the decision that I made on my own team.
Yeah,
but
he's 100% responsible for your actions. Yeah.
Absolutely, without a doubt. And led me to finding the fantasy footballers, which led me to finding fantasy Twitter. And then one day I saw Jeff Lambert, who's with Going for Two, was looking for some analysts to start writing and just for free, just for fun. And I was actually originally a journalism major. I switched to business, but always had a passion for writing. I love to write. And I saw that. It's like, you know what? I'm going to give it a shot. My wife was actually the one who pushed me because it was, looking for something. It just kind of felt like there was something missing. And she's like, you love fantasy, you love sports, you're a great writer. Why don't you just try? And so I did it. I joined him. I did a couple of articles for him, and then I ghosted him. I actually wound up. My wife got pregnant with our second child, and life just got busy. It wasn't intentional. It's just things got kind of crazy real quick. But the next season, I went back to him and I said, I went hat in hand. I said, I apologize. This is what happened. I felt it was the right thing to do to come to you. If you would still have me, I would love to write for you. If not, if you're upset, I completely get it. It's on me. And he was great. He said, no problem. He said, I wondered what happened. He said, but honestly, it happens all the time. And then everything snowballed from there. He gave me a chance and took on a larger role. And a couple years later, here we are.
So I love this because you're talking about the challenges that you face as a fantasy manager, right? Which, it's the same thing that all of us face, right? And then even from the other side, you could see the challenge that Matthew faced, which is, you can have spot on analysis, everything, the numbers match up with what you're saying, but that doesn't matter because real life does not care about your agenda or what you predict. But it is something that it creates common ground, whether you are playing or analyzing. There's always going to be that challenge or that mistake. Was there something for you early on in your career, even to this day, that has really shaped how you do this job? Like something where you say, man, I really made a bad call on this, or something like a big learning moment for you where you've said, okay, I'm never going to make that mistake again as an analyst.
Yeah, there was a couple, but made plenty of mistakes, both as a fantasy analyst and as a fantasy consumer. I've been playing since the late 90s. As we talked about, getting up there in age, and started in fantasy baseball. And actually, starting in fantasy baseball, specifically dynasty baseball, is where the mistake happened, and it kind of shaped how I play. So I can't remember what the year was, but are you a baseball fan at all, or do you didn't know Bo Bichette, so I'm assuming not.
I used to be a baseball fan back when the Marlins were winning World Series. Okay. It was so much fun, and I fell in love. And then every year after they would win a World Series, they would ship off every single player that we fell in love with. And it was just like, well, I'm not going to be in this abusive relationship where this team keeps gaslighting me. Yeah. So yeah, I
don't blame you whatsoever. But so where I'm going with this is Adrian Beltre when he was still a prospect.
Yes.
Big name. I had him. He started off super slow when he was in Seattle, and I dropped him like a week or two into the season. Got picked right up, would go on to have an MVP caliber season. And I learned a very valuable lesson. And I think not only that, but playing fantasy baseball, because baseball players are so streaky, and there's a lot more time for those ebbs and flows to happen. Even prospects, like I've played in some dynasty leagues where you have minor league spots, and the big name prospects that just they have the minor league, so they've got time to develop, and you see what they can do. It's not like football where they just get thrown in there from college, but
Right.
sometimes guys do start slow. It takes that adjustment period, and you can't just give up on them too quickly. Now there's those of us that still are holding out hope for Kyle Pitts in those scenarios, but I really look for it's taught me to look for the opportunities to buy low on guys, whether it's a next year, whether it's a trade, to the talents there. Really look at the context of the situation and what caused them to start slow, or to fall off at the end of their rookie year or something like that. To be a little more patient with those elite talents and realize that they're there for a reason. They were hyped for a reason. Now you get your Jamarcus Russells and Johnny Manziel's every now and then, but I've had a lot of success over the years targeting a guy post hype sleepers.
Be patient on guys like, let's say, I don't know, Odell Beckham, players like that.
This has been fun. I appreciate your time, Alfredo.
All right, man. Have a good one. Happy Thanksgiving, pal. No, you're right. You're right. And this happens every single year. We go and we talk about players to draft, then we'll talk about players to pick up on waivers. And I think there's always that context of this is a young guy, or this is a player that is potentially walking into a bigger role, or they have talent and it's going to be a matter of time, whether it's been with rookies that you wanted to draft before, or second year breakouts, or even rookies now throughout the season, where you're just like, just stay patient. It's going to happen. And if it doesn't, whatever, they've been on your bench, but it's kind of the thing, you'd rather have them and nothing happens than not have them and you miss out, right?
Absolutely.
We talk about that all the time. And that's one of the mistakes that I always see fantasy managers making, is just giving up on players way too soon. Justin Jefferson was one of those guys early in his career. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry to say Odell Beckham was one of those guys, Le'Veon Bell. Like, there was players that just, guys give up on early. What's the most common mistake, though, aside from that you see fantasy managers making? The most common mistake that they make, not like being impatient, but something else maybe.
Yeah, so jumbled around a couple ideas in my head here, and the one that I kept coming back to was buying all the risk. And the name that really kind of comes to mind with that is Lamar Jackson. And he, after the year after, I think it was 2019, where he had that MVP season that he led a lot of people to championships, including myself. And people were drafting him in 1 QB leagues in the first round, in the second round, the next year. And there's no way he's ever going to return value for your team when you're taking him there. And I'm all about get your guys. And, around a couple picks, early, okay, maybe if you want to stretch, but when you're taking that much of a risk with a guy, he's going to have to repeat that type of season in order to return value. And we see it every year when guys get hyped up, and in the their ADP at the beginning of draft season gets elevated 3, 4, 5 rounds, and then they don't return value. They were, look at Bill Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt at the beginning of draft season versus towards the end. I think I have one share of him, and I wasn't even in on him. It was a late rounds. Like, might as well take a shot, because if it does hit, he's worth it there. But when he elevates into the 9th, 8th, 9th, 10th round, he's not worth it. So I would say buying all the risk, and also being afraid to be aggressive with your fab at the beginning of the season. There's everybody's wanting to hold, trying to find that late, end of season, big name running back goes down and you want to pick up the backup, but it's twofold. I usually blow through my fat pretty quickly, and I want to take shots. I want to take shots at finding that Puka Nacua, that Kyron Williams off of waivers that is a legitimate game changer for your team that can push you over the edge towards a championship. And also, the longer you hold on to it, the less valuable it becomes. Like, if you have $50 in fab right now, it's not going to get you as much as it would if you spent it 3, 4, or 5 weeks ago. So that kind of rolls into the whole you're not first, you're last thing. Okay, so what? I don't have fab for most of the year, but I would rather do that than save an extra to outbid you by $2 for a streaming defense.
Now, when you say your fab this week doesn't get you as much as it would have 3 or 4 weeks ago, could you elaborate on that a little bit? Because I'm sure there's people that are listening or watching that are like, I don't get that. And when I say
Absolutely.
people, I mean, I'm people.
Absolutely. So let's say week 10, you have $50 in fab and you spend 20 of it and you pick up somebody. Well, then you have them for weeks 11, 12, 13, 14, so on and so forth. If you hold on to that money until week 13 and then you spend it, well, you're going to get 2 regular season games and then maybe the playoffs. So you're getting more bang for your buck if you're able to hit. It doesn't mean that it's going to work, but I would rather take those shots of getting the value longer than waiting too long to and I mean, it's bit me in the past before where being aggressive sometimes where I literally have nothing in fab and the backup that I need goes for $1 because they know I don't have anything. So it's part of you have to be comfortable with being able to swallow those types of things happening because it does. But when it pays off and you wind up with puka everywhere, it's glorious.
I think that's the biggest thing with both fantasy managers and fantasy analysts is don't be afraid to be wrong because you're going to be wrong all the time. Like
Yes.
this just happens. And I think that too often fear of being wrong is what holds analysts back from saying exactly what they want to say. And that's what holds fantasy managers back from doing exactly what they want to do in their fantasy leagues. I mean, there's a million, like, listen, you could follow this advice to the T and it's sound advice. And for every Puka Nakua, there's going to be a Trey Benson that you put 100% of your fab on and he gets injured the very next week and then you don't have him for as long. These things will happen, but it's a game of probabilities. It's a game of what is most likely to happen. And that's the way I look at it. It's like you kind of have to be comfortable being wrong because it's going to happen. But if you keep going with that process, you're probably going to be right more often than not. You've got yourself a sound process there. And when I think of process, when I think of like the way you put things together from step one all the way to the end, rankings is that thing that comes to mind. Rankings week in and week out become a thing where it's okay. Some people are starting with projections. Some people are just starting from a baseline of, let me just keep the guys in the same order every week and I'll move them around. Rankings are a language to everyone. Everyone looks at them differently. Some guys will put a running back higher because that running back has multiple touchdown upside, or they'll put that same running back much lower because they don't have the pass catching upside. So that's why I kind of call them a language where you need to be able to interpret it for each fantasy analyst. How do you try to write out? I don't want to say write up, but how do you try to think of your rankings week in and week out? Is upside a really big factor for you? Do you just go straight off projections? Like, how does this work for you? How do you interpret it?
I love this question, and it's something that I tried to explain this year. My first year being lead analyst over at QB List, and I ranked the top 300 players, which was a lot of work. Now, every position, and then the top 300 overall. And I had some questions because I don't just go with the consensus. I go with what I believe, and some of it's right, some of it's wrong. Probably more of it's wrong, but the process is there and the time and effort's put there. But I kind of see, and I get a little pushback with this, I really see rankings more as a long start sit list. That's how I view it. I start with a consensus, and take into account projections and my analysis and stuff like that. But literally, I'll go through and, okay, I want to start. If I was starting, if this was my team, would I want this guy or this guy? Would I want this guy or this guy? And that's how I start and get my initial rankings, and then go through and account for things like the matchup, whether it's week to week basis, the matchup, projected game totals, things of that nature. Is this team good against the deep ball? Things along that. But you're also, I feel like start sit is really there. You have to have the context for. That's why rankings are so hard, because this guy might be the right play for your team if you're needing upside, but this guy might be the right call for me because I just need a safe floor. So this it's kind of like a long start sit list, like I was saying, but it's hard because the context has to be there in order for it's not a one size fits all paint by numbers for everybody. And I prefer to think in tiers versus rankings. Guys of the caliber of player that each guy's going to be, where pick from one of the if you got X amount of RB1s, X amount of RB2s, and try to build from there.
So the way I know that the way I like to do it is, yes, the tiers are important. I know that when I make my rankings, I'm always going to make them based off of projections, because I think that's sort of the easiest place to start, right? And so there'll be times where someone will say, "Hey, would you start DK Metcalf or Jamison Williams?" Right? And I'll be like, "Well, I have DK Metcalf ranked higher, but I think that Jamison Williams has higher upside. So
Absolutely.
if you're projected to lose by 20 plus points, I'm going to go with the guy that has the higher upside in this matchup, despite the fact that he's ranked lower." And then I'll get people, "Well, why don't you just have him ranked higher?" I'm like, well, that's not how it works. Like I know that it's tough for people to understand that, because it is supposed to be data driven. It is supposed to be, but it's also not an exact science. Like, this is something
Exactly.
where you need to have context. Just like you said, you have to have that understanding of the context. And with
100%.
that,
I was
yeah,
gonna
go.
say,
No, go.
I all the time, exactly what you were just saying. I do a 2 chats a week in the athletic Discord, Sunday morning and Mondays at noon, people asking questions. And I also post my start sit column that I have over at QB List on Reddit on Thursdays. And I go through and answer as many questions as I can. And almost every single one of them, I add some of that context. If you need a safe floor, go with player X. If you need a safe, if you want the ceiling, go with player Y. And then, you get people that are think, "Oh, this, why don't you just give me a straight answer?" Why people think that you're just riding the fence and not wanting to take a stand. And unless you give, and people have learned that's the type of answer I give, and starting to come across with I need upside. This, who do you want? Who do you say between these guys? Or, I'm looking for floor. When they give context like that, it makes it so much easier to answer. But I think if you see somebody who is putting in the time and effort to think about it and give you the different options based on what you're looking for, they're not riding the fence. They're really actually taking the time to put some time and effort into it for you.
Yeah, because if not, I mean, they can just say Trey Benson, start him.
Right.
Right?
Well,
Like that's
I love
that's
Jake to
just
death, but Jake, check the list. If somebody says X or
yep,
Y, he says check the list, and that's
yep.
I get it.
Yeah, no, and listen, there are times where I've done that when it's overwhelming of how many. I'm like, check the rankings. Like that's
Yeah,
how I have it. And there's other times where you have the time to actually be able to go through it, and you can give that context. And I know that for me, you mentioned a lot of factors earlier as to like what goes into your rankings, but I'd love to know, what are some of the main factors, or maybe the biggest one that goes into you making a start sit decision. Let's say for your own team. That's something that me and Andrew Cooper talked about, was that like we will give the best, most sound, logical advice for other people, and then we'll look at our team and be like, "I don't know, I think this guy should go into the running back 2 spot." And it's like someone who should not be there whatsoever, but you're like, this just seems fun, and click submit, and you're good. What's the biggest factor for you? Is it matchup? Like, what could it be?
So when it's close with two guys, that's funny you say that, because I actually did something not too intelligent last week in flex leagues that we're in. I made a trade and acquired both Rashid Shaheed and Parker Washington. And
You
about
don't
10
trade
minutes
with
before,
me.
we can talk about that. But
Well, the trade deadline's gone now, man. You just
that's true. Well, we
Jay.
still have one of our dynasty leagues that we can make a trade in.
Whatever, man. Go with your answer.
But I about 10 minutes before lineup lock, I swapped out Rashid Shaheed. Excuse me, swapped in Rashid Shaheed, and that was not a good call. And I did it solely on a gut feeling. I just felt like he was due, and then I thought Sam Darnold would have some success with the deep ball, but I should have known that everything goes to JSN, and that's the only guy that matters over there.
Yeah, but
But
there's no logic like explaining how good. Listen, I loved JSN going into the season. Thought he'd be much better than where he was being ranked. There's no logic to this. Like this is
nope,
just insane numbers. Nobody predicted
nope.
this.
And I was out on Sam Darnold, and the reason was the Seattle offensive line was awful. Sam Darnold against pressure was awful. I would have made the same call again. Same thing with, I know you and I both like Kenneth Walker coming into this season.
Yeah.
I would make that call 10 times out of 10 based on the way things have looked preseason. And if you watch the game, I don't know what Seattle's doing, but if you watch the two player, him and Sharps on the field, but when it comes to, tough decisions, tough lineup decisions like that, one, obviously the context goes into it. Am I looking upside? Am I looking for floor? Stuff like that. But if it's two pretty much evenly matched guys, I look for those little details. I'll go to, implied team totals, implied game totals. If there's one game that's projected closer to 50 points, one closer to 40, that's a pretty significant. There's a better chance of an additional touchdown getting scored in that game. One thing that kind of gets overlooked, especially later in the season, is the weather. When you've got cold weather going into cold weather outdoor stadiums, if it's close and it's between a running back and a wide receiver, I'm going to lean a running back in the cold weather because they're probably going to run the ball. Look what every year Derrick Henry yards per carry goes up as the temperature goes down.
Yeah,
and it's looking for whatever that little difference maker could be. I like to start with the implied team totals, and it's definitely not an exact science, and there's definitely some gut feelings in there. But I've started to get a little more bold over the past couple of years because I would rather be right. I would rather be wrong going with my instincts than being wrong going with somebody else's or something else.
Oh, heck yeah. Yeah, man.
So it's one of those.
Fortune favors the bold, Jay. Like
exactly.
You get it. You feel it, right? Like we experience this every week. We experience it at the beginning of the year. Like you would rather go with the players you have been at, and like that's also too what I like to tell audience members or fantasy managers. Because they'll say like, man, I really like this guy, but I'm thinking about drafting this guy. I'm like, go with the guy you like. Like this is a game. It's supposed to be fun. Like just do exactly what you want. You can listen to our advice. That doesn't mean you have to take it, right? Like you grow up with your parents giving you advice. You can listen to it. You don't have to take it. Like it could be, I'm not your parent, person watching or listening, but I'm saying like that's kind of the same thing. Like you still get to make your own choices, right? And like that's kind of the beauty of it all, man. Like it should be fun while you're making your own choices.
Exactly. And that's exactly where that comes from is, over the years when I was a consumer, and I would go with the straight rankings versus my gut or something along those lines. And there's nothing worse than seeing a guy that you just wanted to go with for no reason, but you wanted to go with, and the guy just goes absolutely bonkers on your bench.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, it's a crusher. That's worse than getting the loss. Is getting the loss
absolutely.
And that, because then you have shame.
Exactly.
And you can't tell anyone about your secret shame either. You just hate yourself that week.
Exactly. 100%.
So we've talked about like trying to make the decisions for your lineup, but what about trade deadlines pass because this is going to be releasing week 14. But for people in the future, like trade deadline stuff or even waiver wire stuff, when you're looking at a player, you're like, man, late season surge is coming alive. Like it's looking good for this player. How do you typically spot the difference between this is real, this is a breakout for this player and it's coming soon, Luther Burden, versus fool's gold? and it's not happening, right? What is it for you? What are the big things you look for?
So the main thing I look for first and foremost is some sort of change in situation. And I know that sounds cheesy, but it's the truth, whether it's an injury, whether it's a change in coordinator, whether it's a change in the weather, or for instance, Jared Goff has before this week had not looked very good. He's had a couple of games outside. He's got I think it's 6 straight games indoors. So wheels
Mm.
up for that offense. I was actually with the Amon-Ra St. Brown having a couple of down games. I was trying to acquire him anywhere that I could because of that. And he was quote unquote having a down few weeks. Let me see while we're talking if I can pull up the stats. I should have had this pulled up already, but I was looking week before last. I was looking at, okay, is this Jameson Williams thing for real? Is Amon-Ra St. Brown actually, falling his value and his status on the team? And the only difference for Amon-Ra St. Brown was he's getting the same type of target share that he had all year. Jameson Williams was getting more looks in the red zone. And I didn't believe that was something that was going to continue the rest of the season. Now, obviously, I didn't expect Jameson, to go. This is what recorded in week 13. So last week he went a big 0 for 3, and I wasn't expecting that. But I knew that it wasn't something to really be concerned about long term with Amon-Ra. So it's trying to find those things where, for instance, with Woody Marks and Nick Chubb, we got teased earlier in the year that the takeover was happening. Well, he had the one game with plenty of carries, and then it went right back to Nick Chubb. Well, over the past 3 weeks, okay, now that's a trend. Now it's actually starting to happen where Woody Marks has been the quote unquote bell cow for this offense for going on 3 weeks now.
But that's the tough part, right? Like, what if you can't wait the 2 3 weeks? Because by that time it's too late.
Yeah.
Is there something else that like you or is aside from because I look at it the same way, right? It's like what's the
Yep.
situation? Is there something that allows you to sort of tip the scale and take that risk without seeing the finished product, without knowing, okay, Woody Marks is now repeatedly getting 70% of the workload? Is there something in there that you look at or is just mostly going I know for me, if I'm going to be honest, most of it is I go, this is a good player. Like I have watched the film. This is a good player. It would be malpractice and it would defy logic for this player to not get a larger role. Now, granted, it happens all the time. Logic
Travion
gets
Henderson,
defied.
anybody?
Yeah, logic gets defied all the time. Olamide Zaccheaus being the slot receiver over Luther Burden most of the season in Chicago, absolutely nuts. But it's been happening, right? So just because that's my path doesn't mean that it's right. Is there something along the lines for you? Is it similar?
Yeah, when I see something like that kind of stands out that I'm looking for a potential breakout, look for those outlier performances and it literally go watch what happened. You can look at the box score with Kenneth Gainwell this week, he had 10 yards per carry. Well, if you watch the game, 70-ish yards of that came on a fake tush push. And he just rolled out, and that's going to jack up his yards per carry. Now, I like Kenneth Gainwell as a solid flex, especially with his involvement in the passing game, but it's not, I don't think it's the end of the world for Jaylen Warren, like many people are saying, because of the past 2 games with Kenneth Gainwell. And the same thing with Travion Henderson. I was in on him before the season, and all through the season, I was going watching the games. I loved everything that I saw, and even though he wasn't getting those carries, when he was getting those opportunities, I saw the explosive plays. He's going to make some rookie mistakes, but Ramondre Stevenson was making plenty of mistakes too. So
Making veteran mistakes, yeah.
exactly. So I like to try to find those outlier performances, see exactly what's going on, and make a decision for myself. Is it real or is it not? And to be fair, I was not in on Bill before the season as much as everybody else was. But after that big performance against the Chargers, I went back and watched the game and watched every single one of his carries. and he looked mediocre beside those 3 touchdowns. And those 3 touchdowns were literally play calls. It was a tight end coming across to block, and it was a counter, and it was the exact same play. One time it was reversed. There was nobody there to beat. So I was, even after that, everybody was, oh, league winner Bill, league winner Bill. I was like, I don't see it. And that's one of those situations. If he would have become, I'm okay with that. I can deal with making, being wrong on a situation like that, because I didn't see it. And if you paid attention and looked at what was happening with the carries, both Jeremy McNichols and Chris Rodriguez were still plenty involved. And it was just those were the plays that hit. And that's why it's so important to actually look and see what happens versus just reading the box score.
Yeah, I mean, you're always going to find players like Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt who, he's in a timeshare, but there's the explosive plays. And then you can convince yourself, okay, well, if he's making explosive plays off of those couple carries, maybe he'll get more carries, right? But then, like you mentioned, it's the context. It's going in, seeing how those are happening. I know for me, like one of the things I saw was, I believe it was like the week 2 or week 3 matchup he had against the Giants, where everything was off the edges, right? Everything was right off the edges, off tackle, where your defensive ends, Brian Burns and a couple of these other guys, like they're not known for being great run stoppers. Like that was the weakness of the team. So rather than running directly at Dexter Lawrence, he was able to get outside, and then all of a sudden we're turning those big outside runs into 15, 20-yard gains. But then everything else was stuffed in the middle. And so it's like you get that context that you need. Now, once again, not a perfect system, because a lot of those same things have happened with Trevion Henderson. The difference is that Henderson has shown to have value in the passing game. And let's just be honest, too, better offense, too, with the New England Patriots. Right now, and everything has just sort of gone correctly in his way and not so much in Bill's way with the Commanders. Speaking of some of these guys, talking about young guys here, what is your strategy for stashing players? Because right now, everyone's looking at waivers, but there's always going to be players maybe you want to get a week ahead of, 2 weeks ahead of, or you're looking at playoff schedules. What is it for you? Like, what's the strategy when stashing players? Is it high upside rookies, contingency plans, and prioritizing handcuffs? What could it be for you?
It changes throughout the season. The underlying theme is always upside. I always want the upside when it comes to my bench, and it's something that I learned a long time ago. I was a fan of Jake Seeley's and his work, and I was the guy in the chat with him, and he coined the term, the Greg Jennings rule, and I guess you could probably rename it the Tyler Lockett rule now. Is Tyler Lockett, can he start for you and get you 10-ish points? Sure, but you're much better off stashing a Michael Wilson or a Luther Burden or somebody like that you may not be able to start right now, but if things do click, that's a piece that is going to elevate your team to the next level. Especially you have more of those spots available as the season goes along. If you've got Trey McBride and his bye's already passed, you don't need a backup tight end. Use that spot on a high upside player for a different position, especially running backs. I'm a sucker for a good rookie running back. And when it comes to the wide receivers, it's hard to do, but don't worry too much about the situation, man. The opportunity has to be there. But as we saw with Emeka Egbuka, like the talent, the cream rises to the top, in the words of Macho Man. And it's the guys, if they're good enough, it's going to happen. And that's actually, when you said Le'Veon Bell, I chuckled a little bit. It's more on the running back side, but I remember the year that he went off, I didn't draft him because they signed LeGarrette Blount. I liked Le'Veon, and I was like, well, they got Blount there. He's going to take the goal line carries. I don't want a part of that. Yeah, that was a mistake. So, yeah, I'm with you. I want the upside. And when it comes to backfields, I like getting other people's handcuffs, and that just goes along with the way that I play. I don't necessarily like, if you're going into the playoffs and you have Bijan, okay, yeah, that makes sense at that point to go ahead and get Tyler Algier on your bench. But earlier in the season, middle of the season, I want to stack as many of other people's handcuffs because you have a chance at multiple backfields versus one. It's the safe play, the I guess you could say smart, I don't know, of having your backup because then you're covered. But I'd much rather take the chance on having somebody else's and being able to put that chess piece in to elevate your team to the next level.
I mean, it goes exactly back to what you were saying with how you draft teams, which is go all in, right? Whereas like I want to word it properly because you could misconstrue it as saying go all in on one team's backfield, but that's not it, because when you do that, you're really only going all in on just that one player. You can only have one of those guys really playing for you. It's either Bijan or Tyler Algier, right? But when you go all in on saying, okay, I'm going to go out and get Bashal Tutin and Devin Neal and Chris Rodriguez and have all these guys and be ready to go, they can hop in now as starting running backs for my team, and I still have Bijan Robinson.
Bingo.
That's going all in. That's going all in and saying, okay, and that's kind of playing with the house's money too, because you're not risking anything by putting these players on your bench. You're just having a really good insurance plan that allows you to be incredibly strong at a position later. So I love that 100%, man. I got one more question for you here, and it comes from our last guest that we had on the pod, Andrew Cooper. And then you get the chance to ask a question to the next guest, which I have not scheduled yet. So you get to ask a question to a mystery guest.
Ooh,
but
even better.
Andrew Cooper asks, and he was very particular about this, and he wanted me to let him know when this goes out. Okay. What is the best stocking stuffer or present to get a significant other?
Money. No. That's a great question.
I was like, oh my God, he said
it. No. It's really, it can work for just presents in general, but when you said the stocking stuffer, it kind of made me think of the way that my wife and I do our stocking stuffers. I had to make sure I phrase that correctly. It's the small things that make the other person know that they're your human. You know them. You know what they like. Whether it's just my wife loves Lindor truffles. She knows that I love Funyuns.
Who doesn't?
Exactly.
Oh, who doesn't? There
we go. Just
more
those
snacks.
little things that, she loves the big over-the-top cheesy fuzzy socks. Like just little things like that let them know that you're paying attention, that you know them. You know their ins and outs. They're your person. You're their person. And that you love them. Oh, very simple.
That hit me right in the feels. I have my wife's birthday this week. We're recording this on Tuesday, November 25th. My wife's birthday is on November 30th. We are doing puppy yoga. Yes. And it's just, I can't wait. I'm super excited. This is for her. It's her gift. Right?
Exactly.
She has been dying to get back to playing tennis. And since we moved, we don't have a tennis court nearby. So okay. I've bought her, not lessons, but like kind of lessons, I guess, with tennis instructor locally so that she can go and do that every single week. She wanted to get back to playing. And it's just like, it's those little things, man, like getting back to just, doing things for the people you love.
Exactly.
It's beautiful. All right. You get the chance now to ask a question to whoever the next guest is. It could be fantasy related. It could just be life related. It can be anything. It can be about the holidays. You could ask them why Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is the best Thanksgiving movie ever made.
Ooh, okay. You know what? I am going to go, even though this will be after Thanksgiving when this goes out, I'm going to go with a holiday theme.
Yes.
Is mac and cheese a Thanksgiving food?
Oh, I like this. Okay. Well, I got to write this down. Is mac and cheese a Thanksgiving food? Okay. Well, what's your take?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I had some people tell me a couple years ago, like, mac and cheese doesn't belong on the Thanksgiving table. I'm sorry. Mac and cheese belongs on every table. Every table. Specifically, I love him. Used to be my co-host back in the day on my first podcast. Dan Turner doesn't like mac and cheese, which is the first warning sign, but then says, yeah, exactly. Says mac and cheese doesn't belong. But there was people, I was like, that is the most absurd take I've ever heard in my life. And there's dozens of them. There's dozens of people that
there are dozens of those people. That's disgusting. And they should be ashamed of themselves.
Exactly. And how would you
I'm
not want mac? It doesn't
wow.
matter if it's your baked mac and cheese, whether it's blue box, whatever. Mac and cheese is like pizza. It's like it doesn't matter if it's bad, it's still good.
Thank God America invented mac and cheese. Am I right?
Exactly.
Well, man, this has been a fantastic show. I know I had a great time. I got to learn a little bit more from you. I know that the audience got to learn more about fantasy football and Thanksgiving foods as well.
Absolutely.
But Jay, can you please let everyone know what you're working on, where they can find everything that you're doing?
Absolutely. So the first place is Twitter, X, whatever the kids call it these days. You can find me on there at GMenJ. I'm the lead analyst over at QB List. Got a lot going on over there. I do first year that I'm doing rankings weekly for the full year. It's been fun, but we got a good team. Me and Eric Romoff, Brian Hartman, and Steve Pintato. We're doing some ranks over there that drop every Wednesday and Saturday. I do my start sit weekly, which I literally, similar to like the primer for Fantasy Pros or something like that. But I go through and give analysis, a start sit call on literally every position on every team, including defense. Definitely not kickers because ban kickers. But what sets it
Duh.
apart is it's not just looking at the matchups. It's not just the analysis. It's what we strive for over there is kind of like what we're doing here is like you're talking to your friend, you know, you're BSing with your buddies, and it's like having a conversation and trying to come up with those, you know. For instance, I don't when it comes to your must starts like your Josh Allens and well, it was Bijan. I don't know if he's necessarily a must start anymore, but I throw a fun fact in there. So like this week's was for CD Lamb, and I went with a Thanksgiving theme. CD Lamb. This goes through. Through the Boys and Girls Club, he donates Thanksgiving turkeys to families in need every year. But normally it's more of the fun side of things. But I thought it was an appropriate week to do
I
something
love it.
charity based. But and then for a defense, if you're starting or sit them, like I put for the Jets defense, why they're a streamer, and I just put a picture of Kirk Cousins. So little things like that, just to have some fun. That you know, it's the analysis is still there. I still do all the work behind the scenes, but you don't need me to write a paragraph to tell you to start these guys or to sit these guys. So I try to have a little more fun with that. And then I have a podcast comes out on Mondays. It's a short 10 to 20 minute called Sunday's Best, and it's just a quick hitter, go through the 10 or so biggest stories from the Sunday's games, just to kind of give you an arching overview of what happened, and then hitting any of the major injuries to give you a leg up when you're going into your waivers on Tuesday.
I love that, man. I love it. This is so great, Jay. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. I
And for
appreciate you having
everybody,
me.
of course, man. Yeah, of course. I mean, I won't say any time because we're not going to have you back for a little bit. There's so many other guests to get to.
Oh, yes.
But I know I'm going to get to see you again soon. And for everybody that's been watching or listening through this, please go check out Jay's work. And I want to thank you all for watching or listening all the way through. For myself, for Jay, I'll see you next time. Adios.